How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Man the Helm. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, bell icon, so you get notified of all my future videos and all that good stuff. Like, comment, subscribe. Yeah, I already know what to do. Today is a very special day for me because today is the day I release the conversation I had with Mr. Andy Wood. If you guys have been following me for any amount of time, you know Andy is one of my all-time, if not my favorite guitar player. Super rad dude, awesome conversation. Hope you guys enjoy. And keep in mind, this is the video version. The audio version is streaming wherever you get your podcast. Just search Man the Helm. You'll find it. Let's get to the interview. Welcome back to Man the Helm podcast. I'm your host, Jake. Today I'm sitting down with Mr. Andy Wood. What's up, dude?
How are you, sir? Thanks for having me.
Oh, dude, thanks for coming on, man. It's an absolute pleasure. This is a music-based podcast, but it's definitely more about taking control of your life and driving it in the direction you want it to go. And with somebody like yourself, that's like, when I think of that as a guitar player, that's like, and just a musician in general, you're at the epitome, for me at least. You know what I mean? You've taken it, and your love of the instrument and music has just driven you and gotten you to where you are today. So before we kind of get into what you're up to these days, for people that might not know who you are, can we kind of just get like the so-called origin story of Andy Wood, and then we can kind of go from there?
Yeah, anybody that knows my playing, you've heard this story 100 times. And if you haven't, if you don't know my playing, I grew up actually a mandolin player. My grandfather got me started in the hills of Western North Carolina, and my cousin plays fiddle. And we didn't have any brothers or sisters. It was just us two. We were the same age. And so he started us out when we were about 5 or 6, playing a lot of Bill Monroe, Del McCoury, Newgrass Revival, Tony Rice, Mark O'Connor, all that kind of good stuff. And John Hartford, man, I could just go on forever just in my bluegrass life,
of course,
type of stuff. But we'll keep it short. About the age of 17, I was working in a theater in Pigeon Forge, playing acoustic and mandolin. And if you don't know what Pigeon Forge is, it's a little city in East Tennessee that kind of is like a Branson or a
for sure.
Like a lot of Vegas style shows and things like that there. So, there's Dollywood and then this kind of stuff, So I was working in those theaters, and one of the guys working in the theater made me a mix CD, and it had the quintessential stuff that I had never heard before, right? Paul Gilbert and Steve Morse and Eric Johnson, all this kind of stuff. And at that same time, I'd gotten the Mark O'Connor New Nashville Cats record. And I bought it because Sam Bush and Bela Fleck were on there.
Nice,
and
yeah.
A lot of bluegrass stuff. But I heard a Telecaster solo by Brent Mason on track number 4, which is Pick It Apart. And it changed my life. And my life was consumed with I have to learn how to play that solo on the guitar. It's like that. And so got a Tele, had a PV Bandit, Dynacomp, and a yellow SD1 Boss, like whatever. And that was my rig. That's all I had. So I was learning all this stuff, and off to the races. By the age of 22, I had just won the Guitar Center Big National Guitar Championship thing. They had like 3,500 people enter it, and I was lucky enough to win it. And started a rock band. That rock band was Down From Up. We toured with Seven Dust, Drowning Pool, 10 Years, all those kind of bands. A lot of black T-shirts, a lot of Affliction T-shirts.
Oh yeah,
chains off the hips, and this kind of stuff. We thought we were cool, And then fast forward, the gigs started rolling in, and sessions started really getting busy, and everything from Scott Stapp on his Proof of Life tour, which was the Howard Benson record that he did after the split with Alter Bridge and Creed and all that stuff. And then from there, Rascal Flatts, Gary Allen, Sebastian Bach, peppered in there with a little one-off thing I did for him. That was a really stressful gig, by the way. And then Low Cash, worked with the Low Cash guys, and currently, I've been blessed enough that my solo stuff has taken off, and now I just tour with who I want to, and I have to, so.
Well, I was going to say, the first time I believe I heard about you was from your solo stuff. It was from Caught Between a Truth and a Lie, man. I forget what it was on. I was listening to some streaming stuff, and I believe it was Give Me a Light, or You Got a Light came on, and I was oh, what is this, man?
Yeah.
And then just started diving into the catalog. You know what I mean?
That tune's a handful.
Oh yeah.
There's several live performances of that thing from the Surf Factory parties and stuff, but man, those arpeggios. Now it's like boys are like, hey, let's play that. I'm like, I'm tired tonight.
Right.
Play that thing. But yeah, that album was a big project because it was a double record and had one side all acoustic, one side all electric. It was a major undertaking. And then Junktown came out, and that kind of changed the course of my life in a lot of ways. We could talk about how that goes together. And now I'm doing the Woodshed Guitar Experience, which is a 4-day guitar retreat I do in August. And it's limited to 100 people. Basically, everybody is a VIP type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
All inclusive. That's your lodging, your food, your alcohol, bringing in a chef and everything. And you have lessons with some of the greatest guitar players on the planet, guys like Joe Bonamassa, Robin Ford, Brent Mason, Andy Timmons. This year we've got Eric Johnson, Seth Bloom, Mark Terry, Greg Koch. I mean, it's stacked. It's Avengers level type event.
For sure. And to have an experience like that, as like, I've heard some people online, and I don't want to get too much into the ding dongs online that like to say all oh, well, that's just too expensive, man. It's like, that is literally a once in a lifetime event that you have the opportunity to go to.
Dude, so here was the pricing. This was the perspective. I was like, I want to make something that the 20-year-old me would have killed somebody to go to.
For sure.
So the pricing was, let's take 7 concerts and price those out. How much does it cost to go see Joe Bonamassa? How much does it cost to go Eric Johnson? Okay, let's average in a couple of beers and dinner and a hotel, right? Okay, from there, how much does it cost for a lesson, a one-on-one lesson? At minimum, guys like me and Mark, at minimum, are a couple $100 an hour. At minimum. Sure. And then you get guys that just don't offer it, right? So a guy like Eric Johnson doesn't do one-on-one lessons, okay? A guy like Andy Timmons, I'm pretty sure doesn't do a whole lot of one-on-one lessons. Like, they're just, big names or whatever. Bonamassa, I know, doesn't. So then we averaged in like VIP experiences. And then once you average it all out, like, our total was like $8,500. Yeah. Like, if you were to do that, if you were to take all of that stuff that we offer, and on top of it, we, it's a private event. As a guy that's lived in the pop country world, I see these packages go out for Brooks and Dunn or Luke Bryan or whoever, and these $700, $800 VIP packages. And you go and you get to hear a couple of songs before the concert. You get a t-shirt and stuff, but it's like a 30-minute experience. Like, our event, yeah, it's $3,000, but there's only 100 other people there. And you wake up in the morning, you're eating breakfast with Brent Mason.
Right.
And there's not that pressure to be like, oh God, I got to ask him what kind of strings he uses. How do you play this solo? Like, it's just like, you got 4 days of just full immersion, and everything's sold like a turnkey cruise type experience. Like, you show up and we've got a little vendor village in one of the hangar areas where, like, if you've never played a Sir, or if you've never done this, and dude, I'm not at liberty to talk about what we give away, but we give away big prizes. We give away stuff that costs more than your ticket. So it's like, I mean, like, I could say that in the past years, like, Mark Lettieri gave away one of his signature models, and it's like, there's a $4,000 PRS or whatever, $3,800 guitar. It's like, these types of things, I try to just create something out of a form of passion and love for the guitar and guys that I look up to in 2 forms, right? Guys that I came up in the scene with that are like peers, and then guys that, like, the 18-year-old me would have been flipping their lid to spend 2 hours with them, much less 4 days. So it's like, when anybody says it's expensive, I'm just like, I mean, yeah, but have you priced out everything that we're offering in a la carte scenario? Like, have you, because it would be $10,000,
Oh, easy. Yeah.
So,
well, what I love about it too, and it doesn't matter what level you are as a musician, like, at least in my perspective, being a musician is all about the hang, being with, your buddies, hanging out with people, having a good time. Like, yeah, the gear's cool and all that, but I mean, I can get online and look at forums and Instagrams, whatever. I can look all that up on my own. You know what I mean? But being physically present, like you said, waking up and just eating breakfast with one of your guitar heroes, just hanging out,
much less after the concert, you're going to be jamming with them.
Right.
At the end of the day, like, after the concerts, we do a big concert every night. So you have classes all day and stuff like that. And at the end of the night at like 9:30, it's just jams. You can be playing freaking Cream songs with Greg Koch. I mean, like, it's funny because Mark Lettieri is such an awesome bass player. Like, he's a nasty guitar player, and that's very evident. But at the end of the night, he's always like, "Hey man, can I play bass?" And like
Right.
playing Superstition, friggin' Mark's playing a bass line. It's like that's you can't you can put a price on it because it's what we charge, but like you also will leave that going. I'll tell you one. This is my favorite story of recent. Like those that know Robin Ford know he's this like Grammy winning, accolade winning, played with Miles Davis guitarist. Okay, if
Oh
you don't
yeah.
know Robin Ford, hang up right now and
Yes.
go to YouTube. This is a living legend. And we had Robin. The other thing about Robin that's interesting is he has the very first Dumble that Alex built outside of Alex's personal amps. He has Dumble number 2 or whatever.
Right.
So Robin's living in Nashville. I reached out to him like, "Hey man, come do this thing, man." You know, it's like, "Are you interested?" He's like, "Sounds awesome. I'll be there. I'll bring an amp." I was like, "Okay, you want a super? What do you want me to backline for you?" You know, because like we have live band. We don't do backing tracks.
Yeah.
Like you ain't playing to no iPad, right? We
Mhm.
bring in session
sure.
players, like beast players to play, right? Like the drummer we have is a guy named Jim Riley who's been on the cover of Modern Drummer half a dozen times, right? And so, anyways, Robin's like, "Yeah, I'll bring an amp. Don't worry about it." He shows up with like the Telecaster and the Dumble, like, and I'm just like, he's sitting his like water on top of it, and we're all
Right.
just
Right.
what the crap. So I'm teaching one of my classes, and I get a text and it says, "Hey man, did you hear about Robin's amp?" And I was just like, "Oh God, this is awful. This is how I get canceled in the guitar community by
Right.
you know, this amp's in at the bottom of the lake or something." So I go up there, I rush up there after my class. Dude, Robin's just sitting there hanging out, and he was watching all the campers take turns playing the amp. And I go, "Dude, you did not have to do this. This is not part of like the agreement or anything." He's like, "Man, it's totally cool. It's just like they started talking about it." And I was just like, "Here, try it out, man. It's just an amp." And I was
Right.
just like, you leave that and you're like, "Yeah, I played Dumble number 2." And
Yeah.
it's also the Talk to Your Daughter amp. And it's also the amp that was on stage with Miles Davis. And it's just like, you can't do that at most guitar retreats. Like that's just not something that's available
I would argue to say you can't do that at any.
in life.
Well, exactly. That just in general, that
Yeah.
situation is never going to happen,
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So that's the kind of environment that you can create when you limit the attendance to such a small number.
right.
Like an artist is only talking to 15 or 20 people at a time. They're not talking to 300 or 500.
Yeah. And like you said, it's VIP, but for 4 days, you know what I mean? Most like the VIP stuff I've been to have been absolutely phenomenal. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. Like I'm not trying to say it wasn't a great experience, but it was kind of just a standardized, sanitized little experience. You know what I mean? It's like, "Hey, yeah, thanks, man. You showed up an hour early. You got to maybe see sound check, ask you questions and maybe come up on stage, check out the gear. And then, hey, we're going to, head on back and rest up for the gig until, we got to play,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is great. It's a great experience, but it's having an opportunity like you are offering with the Woodshed Experience is one of those, like I said earlier, just once in a lifetime. I would say if anybody is listening to this, that if they ever have the opportunity, maybe not this year, start saving for next year if you want to go, man, because it
It's
is
killer.
like, yeah,
And this year is really special to me because really, really important players to my journey are
right,
all on it. Like EJ's on it. Like that guy's hearing his music changed my life. I mean, I have a song on Junktown that's basically a thank you. It's a love letter type tribute to EJ. It's like, and Brent obviously is childhood hero in my studio back here behind me. I have a letter that I wrote Brent when I was about 16, and a fan letter. He wrote me back, and just I always keep that letter on the wall just to remind me, like, where I came from, who my guys are, and like to have all those dudes want to be a part of it. It's like, I mean, it's just so fun. I just talked to Brent the other day. He's like, "Hey man, we doing it this year?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we're doing it this year. It's on, I'll see you there."
Well, it's cool too because I kind of wanted to get back to like the community of musicians, guitar players, stuff like that. Like there's not like, don't get me wrong, there's always bad apples in whatever group, however you want to classify that as, but most musicians are such a special kind of person, man. Like they're so down to earth, so nice. I've never met anybody that's like just a jerk just to be a jerk. They might be a little abrasive from time to time, but that's just kind of how their personality is. They're not really being that way. It's just they're kind of hard to talk to sometimes. You know what I mean? I think that comes with the territory though of getting that 10,000 hours in if you're going to be like that pro level, whatever that means these days, musician. You know what I mean? You're sitting so much focused on this instrument, and you don't think the same way as most. I don't want to say normal people.
Well, you spend a lot of time alone.
Exactly.
You don't get that good at an instrument and not spend a lot of time by yourself.
Right.
Like that's completely, that's the one thing, if there is like a hazing into the fraternal order of guitar, it's like, hey man, you sat in your room for freaking, nobody just picks it up. Like I love, I love it. I love to feel and appreciate the spirituality. I'm pretty spiritual dude, and, definitely blessed, but I'm blessed to be around players. I'm blessed to be in a musical family. These things are definitely blessings, but like from Mateus Asado to John Petrucci, nobody picked it up and started playing. Like, no matter how blessed you are, no matter how fortunate your upbringing is, or how musical the church is you went to, or how great the high school band is it started. No, it doesn't matter your origin point. Does not matter. Nobody picked it up and just commenced into playing music. So the one bond, the reason that we guitar players love the community and love playing, no matter how competitive some guys make it, it's like, it's still a fraternal order of like, we all sat in a room for a lot of time with nothing but the instrument.
Right.
You just cannot physically play an instrument without sitting alone with it for years.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's really where, for me, it's like you said, I appreciate music in general, and I love the way you start off most of your YouTube, or all of your YouTube videos, I'm pretty sure, with hello music lovers, because that is really what I feel from you, is you are a lover of music. You know what I mean? It's not just guitar, it's not just mandolin, it's music in general. And that competition part of it, you see it online, and I think it's not as prevalent as people think it might be, just because of what they're fed through Instagram, TikTok, whatever.
Everything's a magnifying glass.
Exactly.
I mean? It's like you take 1%, that's the biggest. It's like, but that's not real.
No.
Go to any festival, go to Guitar Center, and you see a couple of guys who never met each other start nerding out on Flying V or something.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing I've always loved about the content that you put out, especially on YouTube. It's like you're the way you teach too. It's so easy to listen to. You know what I mean? And then you walk away with this understanding that you didn't have before, or this perspective of a certain technique or a playing style that you might not have thought about, and for you to put stuff out like that online is just like an invaluable resource, dude. It's phenomenal.
I appreciate that, man. I to this day, I don't consider myself a teacher, and I think that's the thing. I just, if I'm just anything, it's a curator. Like,
sure.
So it's like, I'm just here to pass along something that somebody passed to me at some point, and most of the lesson stuff lives in Patreon on that platform, because I'm allowed to dive deeper and kind of go off the record. When you make stuff on YouTube, it's an interesting thing, because I love the way guys like Bukovac do it, where he just puts up a cell phone video and just talks to it, right? And then I also love the way guys like Fluff and Eller and Ola do it, where it's really slick and nice, and there's jokes and memes and stuff. Like, I like that too, right?
Right.
And finding your own path on YouTube is an interesting thing. And for me, it's very shoot from the hip. Like I don't know what I'm going to make that day. And today, obviously last week, I don't know when this will air, but last week was a really, really painful week as a music lover, because we lost a titan of bass guitar. We lost Michael Rhodes.
Yeah.
And if you don't know that name, that's okay, but you've definitely heard his music. He's one of the most recorded bass players in Nashville. And every session, every, freaking, it doesn't matter what record, it's like Mike's probably on it somewhere. And if you're a blues fan, Mike's been touring with Joe for a long time. And outside of that, man, we lost David Lindley.
Yeah.
And then we lost, a couple of days ago, we just lost the last surviving member of the original Skinner. We lost Gary Rossington. So like, where I live in the South of the United States, it's like, Skinner is, dude, that's,
absolutely.
Skinner, Allman Brothers, ZZ Top. That's the kind of like rock and roll that was the soundtrack of everybody's high school, and it doesn't matter how old you are when you were born. Like, I guarantee you go to Bearden High School or wherever, Gatlinburg Pittman High School, somebody's got a ZZ Top record. You know what I mean? Somebody's got a Skinner record. I mean, like, so this part of the country, that's some really important music, and Skinner has had a really rough run as far as members, but I was lucky I got to see Gary play a couple of times, and he's passed on now, but the slide outro of Freebird, it's like, you're talking about freaking Freebird, right? Like, it's so popular, right. It's a meme of itself until somebody plays it incredible, and then it's no longer a meme of itself, right? It's like the Stairway to Heaven or something, right?
For sure.
Like it's that song, and I don't want to derail the podcast, but I mean, like, when I was talking about shooting from the hip on YouTube, like, that's the video I'm going to make today. I might not even play a note. You know what I mean? It's just like, can we all just take a minute? It's like, it's been a crazy year, and it's been a crazy time on YouTube. I feel like I don't want to feel like I've cursed my heroes, but like, since I've been doing this stuff, man, we lost Eddie, we lost Tony Rice, we lost Jeff Beck. It's like this, I don't like it. I don't like whatever's happening with the old, players. We forget. I guess it's the thing where we forget. Like, to me, in my mind, Eddie Van Halen's still 31 years old.
Exactly.
Swinging from the rafters in Panama video. It's like, and when I see Tony Rice, I didn't see him at any other way except standing on the stage at Merle Fest in the suit with the red tie, and he's 44 or whatever. It's like, my heroes never got older in my mind. And I was lucky to see Jeff. I got to see Jeff in October, and I had no idea. Me and Travis, my buddy Travis Toy, great steel player. We were like, I was like, man, he's coming close. He's coming to Louisville, Kentucky, and that's not far. It's a couple of hours, 3 or 4 hours or whatever. And I was like, we got to go see him. It's like, it's Jeff Beck. Who knows when he's going to be within 6 hours again? Thank God I went to see him. It was incredible too. Just an incredible show.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're hitting that point in history where we're losing the guys that the guys and girls that like really focus the instrument in the very specific ways for individuals. You know what I mean? Like you said, the guitar heroes, the guys and girls that really like you said,
we have hanging on our walls. Like, there's a picture
exactly
there. It's like, it's not even like, this is my favorite guy. This is like, it's not even like, oh, I love this guy's playing. It's like, this guy carved out a chunk of pop culture, like beyond guitar. Like, Van Halen is bigger than guitar. You go to the University of Tennessee and you turn on Jump in the parking lot, everybody knows it.
Right.
That's pop culture,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm kind of curious though on how we proceed into the future though, because I don't know that if there's ever going to be one of those like great guitar heroes again.
Oh, there is. Yeah, there will be. No doubt in my mind.
Well, what I mean by that is I mean for the mass,
I mean that too. I totally
okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I mean that. No, I think like here's hot button topic. Here's where I flare up all your comments section and everybody agrees with me. Okay. John Mayer is that guy. No question.
Sure.
No doubt.
Okay. Yeah.
The Mark Knopfler of our generation that plays great guitar. Not anybody that says that John Mayer can't play good guitar, sit down with him.
Right.
And get roasted. Like, it's like that. He's a great guitar player. And I think he writes great ballads and great songs that he goes to Atlanta and plays to 60,000 people 2 nights in a row.
Right.
We just don't want, it's hard for us as the age, as guys and girls born in the 80s and 90s. It's hard for us to associate that John Mayer is that guy, because he's our guy, right? He came up with us. But he doesn't have that Arthurian legend that like Jimmy Page has, right?
For sure.
But he will, like, to the 12-year-olds that are now, to the 9-year-olds that are now, the 13-year-olds. Like, John Mayer's got a freaking 9 album catalog.
Oh, yeah.
It's just gigantic, it's crazy. And those are the things that are released, not it's like, so I think John Mayer is that guy. I think Brad Paisley is that guy. Brad Paisley is a guitar hero that absolutely has signature model, everything, pedal, guitar. Like, he is a guitar hero, but he plays arenas.
Yeah.
And yeah, they may not be falling off of trees. Like there's not like a Steve Vai every other day of the week. And I think that's the hard part is it's not a traditional shred guy.
Yeah.
But like I still have those guys. And I think, man, I hope that his career stays on the trajectory it is. I think Billy Strings will be there.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
He sold out Bridgestone Arena 3 nights in a row. And for people who don't know, that's where the Nashville Predator hockey team plays. And this guy hasn't got a song on the radio. I think Joe Bonamassa will be that guy.
Yeah.
Like he plays 200 nights a year and the smallest crowd he plays is 4,000 people.
Yeah.
Like, that's guitar hero to the hero. Like he's playing bigger venues than freaking Jeff Beck did.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm coming at it from a place of like you said, I had a different perspective about it. And once again, that's why I like listening and hearing everything you have, because you put me in a different headspace now. You know what I mean? It's awesome. But that's the thing. You have like this mythical thing with, you know, the older guys that kind of brought the instrument in, and you're not thinking about it from that perspective of the here and now. But because all those people you just named off are 100%, you're 100% correct. You know,
yeah. I mean, like, there's no question. Like anybody with 2 ears hears Brad take a solo, you're like, the guy can play the crap out of the guitar. Right. You know, it's not like a shtick or a gimmick, you know? And it's interesting because when guys get in the pop culture kind of realm with the guitar, you end up with a Vince Gill scenario where people don't know that Vince is playing guitar on his records.
For sure.
Like by that, I mean, obviously guitar players know that, but like, you know, our girlfriends, our cousins, like they just go see Vince Gill because it's Vince Gill, you know, or Martin Stewart because it's Marty Stewart, right? You don't register that like, oh, he's the guy that's playing the guitar. It's like that's kind of like the Brad thing or the Keith Urban thing. Like Keith's another one. It's like Keith takes solos all night long, and he like the band leaves the stage and he sits at the piano and he plays his ballads by himself. It's like that's like legendary icon Elton John, Billy Joel. I mean, if people will argue that like, oh, he's not that, I'm like, yes, he is, because he's playing the arenas. You just don't like his music. That's the separation. And that's okay. It's okay to not like Keith Urban, but it's not okay to say he's not the guy that is doing the thing that your hero did. And maybe on a bigger scale than your hero. For sure.
I think it might be one of those things where like the more popular the artist is, the more individuals might delegitimize their playing a little bit.
I think 1,000,000 to 1.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, I love to get on Facebook and see people slagging on Joe. Like, and Joe loves to see it. Like Joe's got a great sense of humor about it. Here's the thing. We had me, Timmons, Mark, you know, Brent, we've got this Avengers lineup at this event that we do. And when Joe pulls it out of the case and plugs straight into the high-powered twin, and there's no gimmick and there's no shtick, and he starts playing, you're like,
right.
And anybody on Facebook's like, oh, I mean, it's just pentatonic. Hey, you do it.
Right.
Hey, if it's that simple, you do it. And it's the ultimate rebuttal, because it's so crazy to think, you know, it's a difference in saying, again, it's like I love cars and I love automotive stuff, and I use this anecdote and this analogy a lot, right? Where it's like, he's a great muscle car, but if you like Italian exotic cars, you're not going to like it no matter how good the muscle car is, right? Or a monster truck or whatever, right? And that's the difference. People get on Facebook and like, oh, Joe sucks, man. You should hear, you know, Guthrie Govan or whatever, like Plenty or whatever. It's like, I love Guthrie and I love Plenty, but that's apples and bicycles.
For sure.
And they're both great. Apples are great and bicycles are great. But saying that that's a comparison, it's like, dude, you can't do that. And because Joe is popular and he's popular with a certain demographic, people slag that he can't bring it. But it's like, if you think he can't bring it as player, you get on stage with him, he'll cut you to pieces. Absolutely. Sure. He's one of the few players, and I don't want this to sound wrong. I was about to start this sentence wrong. He is one of the few players that I know I have to bring it or I will get buried. Like, I have to absolutely bring it. So yeah, I mean, like, long story short, all the guys that we're talking about have the tendency to be so popular with a demographic that this one person may not hang out with. And because they're so popular with that demographic, this person may underestimate their actual chops or skills on the instrument. But the guys we just listed, Vince Gill, Bonamassa, Paisley, John Mayer, Billy Strings. I don't care who you are. I don't care how many Dream Theater solos you've learned or whatever, how many things you can play. Sit down with those dudes and jam, and you will get put in your place in a hurry. Like it is very humbling to be around guys that are masters of their craft on that level. They just happen to have taken it even farther. You know?
Yeah. Well, this is actually a good segue. I put out on my socials that I was going to sit down and talk to you, and I actually got a few questions, and I had a really good one that kind of gets into that. I don't know if you're familiar with Rick Calhoun, but he runs Honey Picks out of North Carolina. He's a super cool guy. But one of the questions he wanted to ask was, I've always been amazed with how equally great he is at bluegrass and rock stuff, etc. The man could literally sit with guys like Paul Gilbert or Ricky Skaggs. First, how is that even possible? And then, how have the different genres influenced each other in your playing?
Yeah, I would say the answer to the first question is boredom is a powerful ally.
For sure. Yep.
I am just a music fan of so many different things. Coming up in a bluegrass family, at Thanksgiving or Christmas, it's fiddles and mandolins and sing-alongs. So that's a cultural thing, you know. Also, it's like, you know, Brazilian music and South American and Latin music or Afro-Cuban music, like that's cultural.
Yeah.
People don't go to school for that. You're born into that culture, and it's a thing. Like you know, in gypsy cultures, Hungary, Romania, and all that stuff, you have a lot of gypsy jazz, Django Reinhardt type of stuff. That's a cultural thing. That's like your Rosenbergs and Borellis, and you know, if you don't know these names, please go. But like everything that I am as a player comes from this source of how I talk about the guys that I talk about. Like I know who Jimmy Rosenberg is. I know who Borelli is. Like I know who Brent Rowan is. I know who Albert Lee is, and I know who Wes Montgomery is, and I know who Jim Hall is. You know, it's like I know who Ted Green is, Grant Green. Like there's different shades of green that are different shades of players, right?
For sure.
That's a great question, and to me, it's all just 12 notes in Western music. So learning the phrasing of something and really enjoying the music is the most important thing. A pet peeve of mine, and maybe this is an answer to the question and he doesn't realize, a pet peeve for me is to hear a player and know that they're playing the genre that's not their genre.
Yep.
I don't like to hear a guy play Van Halen songs who I can tell is a jazz player, and they're not sassy. They don't have the
right
vibrato. Just like I don't like to hear a guy who only plays Scarified and Racer X and Judas Priest songs try to navigate a song like Cherokee. You know, it's like
right.
You could tell that there's a gap in the vocabulary, and I don't want to sound like I know it all, because I sure as hell don't. But I can tell you right now, I'm comfortable on you know, a Sweet Georgia Brown or Scrapple from the Apples, basic Parker type stuff. I'm not going to solo over Countdown for anybody. Like I need a couple of weeks to shed the Coltrane matrix. But you know, I spent a couple of years at UT, University of Tennessee, the jazz program, and I got my claws in that.
For sure.
I spent a lot of time on the road opening for Seven Dust and learning how to play a riff in drop C and sound like it's ferocious. Like you cannot play that style of music the same way you play a ballad or something cinematic, you know. And I love John Williams, and I love Danny Elfman, and I love all this different type of stuff. And for me, the things that I've whatever my sound is, you know, this faux fusion of all these different genres, it's a culmination of genuinely enjoying the music that starts at Pavarotti and cycles through John Williams and Bach, and then it goes to Tony Rice and Del McCurry, and then it ends up at Van Halen, and then goes to Steve Morse for a little bit. Like I genuinely listen to that kind of music. Like this week I listened to Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings all week long. All week long. Like that's what I wanted to hear, was just, you know, songs like Poncho and Lefty and The Highwaymen and stuff like that. If you want to become a very fluent country player, that's the number one question I get is right hand technique. How do I do the bluegrass thing? I'm like, how much bluegrass do you listen to?
Yeah.
They're like, not much. I'm like, there's your problem.
Right.
Like, you don't learn another language by Rosetta Stoning it through 5 different languages. You
Mm-hmm.
want to learn to speak good German? Move to Germany for 5 years.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how you do it. And that's not a blowing it off kind of answer. I just think that, for a lot of people in life, we have quite a bit of time on earth. If you're blessed to live to 70, 80, 90 years old, you got a lot of time, man. Spend a couple of years on something. It's not as simple as, what scale do I play over bluegrass? I'm like, God, man, that's not it. That ain't it, dude.
Right.
It's just 12 notes. It's the same 12 notes that he played Eruption with.
Mm-hmm.
It's just cycled in a different order. And learning authenticity is everything. Like, take away every guitar solo from every Van Halen song. The riffs and the rhythms are still the sassiest sounding stuff I've ever heard. It's got the most attitude, the inflection. That's my love for Malcolm and Angus. That's my love for Billy Gibbons. Like, learn that attitude and how to shake the ropes. That's the Slash thing. But that also is like, not the skill set and the tools you need to navigate Gold Rush or Jerusalem Bridge. Like,
Right.
it's not the skill set,
Yeah, it's a funny thing. Whenever I've heard you say that before, it's just like, well, why, if you want to learn something like this, why aren't you listening to more music? Because for me, it's like, I'm going to take songs and artists that I really like, and I'm going to learn some of their stuff, and I'm not learning it to like be able to play their stuff note for note and just be a robot. You know what I mean? Like, I'm learning it to like kind of get a gauge of like how they utilize that instrument and how they sound, and then I can take these cool tricks and tips that they do in that music and kind of throw it into my stuff. You know what I mean? That's what I really liked about it, what you said at the beginning. You're not really a teacher, you're more of just a curator of spreading out this information,
right? It's like a language. Like, music is such a language. And if you want to improve any aspect of your language, you want to be a better rock player, like, get on Facebook in whatever town you live in. I don't care how small it is. Find dudes that play rock and roll at the local whatever and go hang out there. Hang there. Be with them at sound check. Join a band. You want to play good bluegrass? Same thing. Find dudes that own Martins and sit down with them and work on tunes together. And that's the same with jazz and anything else. Music is a language, and it's a living, breathing language. And that's why you end up on two sides of player. You end up on the side that is like a Brent Mason or a Bonamassa, where they can play all this different stuff and feel free on a lot of different styles. Or you end up as a player that has assimilated knowledge through memorization, and you can only play the tabs or the things that you've learned or the things that have been spoon-fed to you. Here's the thing. All right, here's my big message statement that's been my message statement for 2023. All right, Jake, the human brain only has so much hard drive space.
For sure.
You cannot buy more memory cards, okay, for your brain. So if you're playing music from a recalling a memorization only aspect, you will run out of storage, and you will start, like, on the flip side, you have the other side, which is you're trying to use the idea, the intervals, the rhythm, the harmony. You're trying to use that as a language. Like, take the word language. You don't hear the letter G when I say language. You're not isolating letters down to know what I'm saying. That is the same thing as like, well, what scale do I use? What is those are just the things that you can play a lick that has a major third and minor third together. And that's like the neutral third, the blues kind of sound.
For sure.
Like, that can be a Stevie Ray Vaughan lick. That can be an Eddie Van Halen lick. That can be a Brent Mason lick. That can be a bluegrass lick. That can be a Wes Montgomery lick. Every player that you love has used major, minor, third together. Mm-hmm. So if you know that major, minor, third are just letters of the alphabet, then they cease to be this thing that you need to regurgitate in a certain order, and they start to function like words and letters, and then you start communicating. That's my tangent. That's my TED Talk.
Oh, absolutely, dude. Well, and that's the thing. I just started teaching at a local mom and pop shop here close to me, and that was one of the things. I had a almost on the edge of like intermediate beginner, like somewhere right in there, and that was one of the first things he said. He's like, "Well, I just want to play scales," and it's like, okay, we can do that, but like what I wanted to figure out what you want to do with
What do you
these
want to
scales.
accomplish?
Yeah,
That's the most important question.
because if I can sit here and show you the 5 positions of minor pentatonic all day, okay, but now you're going to sit there and be like, okay, I have these box shapes. What do I do now?
What do I do with it?
Yeah,
That's that. So like in educational aspect, there was something that really stuck out with me, and it didn't hit me until I started teaching and doing Patreon and stuff like this. In college, when I went to University of Tennessee, I had a music theory 101 class. Okay. I was a jazz major, but you still had to take normal, like with marching band and horn
right.
and stuff. And so I sight read terribly. I'm a guitar player, right? I mean, that was, so like I sight read awful. And I would cheat. I would use my ear as soon as he played something. I was like, "Oh, well, I know that." I couldn't sight read at all. But in that first class, he was like, "Music is made up of 3 things: rhythm, harmony, and timbre." And I was like, okay, what's the word timbre mean? Tone, sound. Okay, cool. As an educator later in life, I'm like, that's the one that nobody wants to teach because that's the artistic perspective.
Right.
It is definite on rhythm. What is a 16th note? It's definite what is a swung 16th note. What's not definite is how hard the swing is. Okay.
Right.
What is definite is this an A flat? Is this 8 cents sharp of an A flat? Like those are 100% facts. What's not a fact is how it sounds.
Yeah.
Van Halen records are a little out of tune. He
Yeah.
tuned the guitar to be in tune with himself. Then the band, like Mike was the only bass player. It was like these things it wasn't cut to a click. One that was a big eye opener to me was "Lonely in the Night" by Eric Johnson.
Oh yeah.
Not cut to a click.
Mm-hmm.
I gridded the session to learn this solo for Patreon so I could teach it to them. And that's a fantastic solo, by the way. One of EJ's crowning achievements. But like I was learning it and I was like, oh, it's the mastering has pulled it a little bit out of tune. It's another thing when you cut to tape, the mastering will make it wobble and be out of tune, but you don't notice it, right? So all of this stuff goes into sound and tone and timbre. So one of the things I do at my clinics, I guess I'm teaching, like doing a clinic now, but like if I say, hey man, play me a B on the G string,
Mm-hmm.
and guy A will go bam, and just kind of like poke it out. I'm like, okay, now you play me a B on the G string, and he'll play the wrong note, but play it like wow with all this. I'm like, okay,
Right.
that's the wrong note. I can teach you the right note, but that's what I can't teach.
Mm-hmm.
I can't teach you how to sass it up and put the tone on it, and that can be playing gentle with a thumb like Wes or something, or it could be totally not aggressive. But the tone, sound, timbre aspects of one's playing is where the identity and the thumbprint lives.
Right.
That's where it lives. It doesn't live in the harmony and the rhythm so much as it lives in the overall sound, the culmination. Mm-hmm. Like when you hear on a drum kit, like John Bonham and Buddy Rich or whatever, like they don't sound the same. Like outside, right. If they both go ticka ticka tat, it's like the simplest thing ever. They sound different, and it's the timbre and the tone and the touch and the delivery. That's where the identity lives. It really is.
Well, and see songs like to kind of backtrack a little bit too. You were talking about your tribute to EJ, in Junktown, and Back to Austin off that record is one of my favorite songs, man, because you give such like an homage to him, but it's also you know what I mean? Like it's like I can see where everything is at, where you're taking influence from whatever you were getting from that song, but then it's still Andy Wood, you know what I mean? And that's really what I love about, and those are like my favorite players to listen to. It's like I can hear these influences that you have, you know what I mean? I can see that you've studied these people, I love that you're doing that. I saw a guy the other night at this old open jam stuff. He was obviously a huge Eddie Van Halen fan, phenomenal player, but then he was adding, like you said, his own little sass, his own little like extra stuff to it, you know what I mean? And that's what got me excited about it. It's like, yeah, I could sit and listen to you do note for note, eruption, or whatever you want to do. And yeah, it's going to sound good, I'm sure, but it's still just going to be like a regurgitation. It's not like I want to see what you want to do with it, man. That's what gets me excited as a guitar player.
that's exactly how I feel. You know, it's like you got to find your identity in the lane, and that comes from learning like a lot of your stuff. Like it comes
Yeah.
from, if anybody hears me, they're like, once they hear one of those like sextuplet groupings, they're like, this guy listened to Liquid Tension. Like he listened,
Hmm.
Petrucci. Like, of course I listen to Petrucci. His stuff rips. One of my favorite guitar players, And, but when you listen to him, you can hear Steve Morse and Al Di Meola.
Right.
Like, no question. Like when I hear those little chromatics, that's like total Dixie Dregs, total
Hmm.
Dixie Dregs, and he's the first one to say it. And that's like when you hear Brent, you hear George Benson, you hear Jerry Reed, like you hear the culmination of it all, and finding out who you are and what you are comfortable with in your own skin is like one of the most liberating things as a player. Like that's the most liberating thing, is just being like, hey man, I in my life as Andy am not going to jazz it up as hard as a Jim Hall. Like I'm not a jazz player, but I do love jazz. And if I go hang out and there's people playing jazz, I want to sit in and I want to have the knowledge to just kind of sit in and hang. I'm not going to be like Wes Montgomery or anything, but like I want to hang and play some tunes.
For sure. Well, that's once again, man, that's what it's all about, man. With hanging out with musicians, that's what it's about. It's the hang, it's the good times, and that's things I've talked to some friends that kind of want to get into the professional space. I might not be even qualified to talk about this. I'm nowhere near that. But what I've always heard from my friends that are on the cusp of that or have done that, the playing aspect of it, like everybody's good at their instrument in that space. Like that's like the bare bones standard you got to be at. You got to be a monster at your instrument. But you got to be someone that people want to hang out with, man. Like if you want to try to go to these auditions and these gigs and stuff like that, like if you show up and you're just a jerk, they're going to be like, well, he's got some chops, but I don't know if I could stand hanging out with him for a month. You know what I mean?
Yeah. For sure.
And that's one of the biggest things I always try to tell people. It's like, trying to get into that, like the bare bones standard, you're good at your instrument. But if you show up on time, you're a cool dude to hang out with. Next thing you know, man, you might get some gigs that you probably in your mind might not have the skill level to be at. But if you're a cool hang and all this other stuff, you can start to kind of get the ball rolling on that thing,
Being a complete musician and being a complete person, right? Like,
right.
Here's something that's interesting when it comes to the auditions, like, and getting the gig, so to speak, whatever that means to you, to get the gig. Like,
right.
An interesting thing to me is how complete of a musician a person is. I like to work with drummers like Andy Campbell and Jim Riley and Lester Stell, because they are complete musicians that think about harmony. They think about the bass line. They know that that's a major third. They know that this is, hey man, do this section and we'll build it this way. Like Jim Riley literally wrote the Hal Leonard book on how to chart the Nashville. Like he wrote the book on it. So
Right.
it's like, that guy is a complete musician. It's humbling to be around him because he is such a complete player in so many different aspects, right? So like Lester's the same way and Andy's the same way. These are guys I work with often. And that's what will help you get a gig when you go into audition or someone's trying out, is like being aware that like your tone may be a Friedman with a PRS, right? But like the gig needs a Strat into the Deluxe, right? And knowing that the bass player is going to bring a combo amp tells you that don't show up with the full stack, right? It's like being aware, and now magnify that, or sorry, demagnify it, scope out and think about the singer, right? Like how much effects do they like to use on their voice? They got that thing reverberated, they got a slap back on there. Well, hey man, that kind of tells you where you need to kind of sit. You need to go for the Chris Stapleton kind of rootsier thing, or that Derek Truxey kind of rootsier thing. Like being aware of the position and the spot that you're trying to get helps you. Again, it's just listening, right? It's like just having your ears on. And then also like, man, if you can change a drum head, like that's just another skill, right?
Sure.
Like, all that stuff. I can't change a drum head, it's like, but like this, I guess that's the point, right? It's just how complete a guy are you? Like the things that I can bring to the table beyond just playing the guitar is not only the hang, but like you want to do a podcast, you want to do a video, like I like there's skill sets beyond just hands on strings, I can help you with your signal chain. I can help you with your tone. I can help you chase down noise in your in your rig. Like, these are things that I've assimilated into a knowledge, so I can rebias a diesel. It's like that are valuable, especially on the road in what I will call small big gigs. Like when you're opening for Kenny Chesney, but you're going on at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, that's where you become very valuable, because now you're like a triple threat. You can sing harmony, you can tech, you can tour manage, and you can play the guitar or the bass or whatever.
Right. Well, I kind of wanted to talk about, you're talking about your skill sets, and one of them, is signal chains and, getting tone and stuff like that. I have never been a fan personally of signature gear until I got the gearbox, and I talked to Brian about it when he was on the show, and I kind of wanted to get like how that kind of thing all started, man. Cause like, dude, that has been my go-to for like any cover gigs that I have coming up. Like, that's the first thing going on the board, because it's so freaking versatile.
Yeah, man. I mean? Yeah, that's funny, man. Like, I've got here's where it started. Here's the
there you go.
And it's all the switches are in the wrong spot, and there's stuff missing. This is where it started, the little handwritten metal box. I cut Junktown, and I was in the middle of cutting that, and the guys at Wampler had seen me working on the record, and I was like using a Pinnacle, and I was using the Klon copy, the Tumnus or whatever it was called at the time. It was something before Tumnus. I can't remember what it was. And that's the one I had. And I kept, stacking half of one, and like the back half of the Pinnacle, I had the big Pinnacle, and I wasn't using the boost, and I was using the Klon to push it. And like, they finally were like, hey man, you want to do a pedal? And I was like, yeah, I don't want to just shove these things in a box, put a paint job on it, and call it mine. Right. Like, okay, well, what do you have in mind? I was like, all right, first things first. Number one thing I hate about a Klon is like the unity gain is really weird. Like,
for sure. Yeah.
It's all in the wrong spot. I was like, I want to make it where when you put everything at noon, it sounds like the way people said it, that looks all wonky. I was like, that's the way it should start. I said, and for Pinnacle, I want to change how these frequencies interact, like the mids and the highs. Wasn't a big change, but we went through some different small parts on like a gain thing and the mids and the highs. To me, I like the original idea, and I pitched this to Brian, and he shot it down. Thankfully, I'm glad. But the mids knob was like voice.
Oh, okay.
Because it grabbed a specific mid, and it wasn't like a parametric where it was just dipping or frowning or smiling. It wasn't that thing. And the last thing that we wanted to work on intently was the noise gate. The idea is like, if you don't need a noise gate, fantastic. Don't use it. Roll it all the way counterclockwise and never touch it, right? But if you are playing a crappy bar on Broadway in Nashville, or an old theater in the middle of Iowa, you're going to have bad noise. And so I wanted something that could just reach in there and grab that noise floor, but not take away the sustain of the guitar. Yeah. So that was like how it started. And when it come time to name it and paint it, I was like, man, I want it like Lamborghini orange. I'm a big car nut, and I want like, they're like, what if we put like an engine on it or something? I was like, cool. And like, what are we going to call it? And finally it was like, we went through everything. I was like, oh, Europeans call them a gearbox. I was like, that's perfect, because this is all the gear you need. Like, you got a backline twin, and this pedal, you can get through about anything, So that was the idea, and that's how the pedal came to be. And it always gets me amped up when people like the pedal. And I like what you said. I don't really like signature gear. That was a lot of the reason, like, my name's real small, and like, it's that way people don't see it as like, oh, that's the Andy Wood thing. People see it as like, oh, this is this really sick pedal. And I happen to be my thing, Same way with guitars. Like, I didn't design the guitars out of the Sir guitars out of like to make a signature model. I just always played tellies, and I always hated the back plate.
Right.
And so we used the design from the Modern that I loved. I love this design. And I was like, every time I play a Modern, it's just so easy because your hand doesn't hit it. Even when you're playing in like E or F, like, your hand doesn't hit that. So I said, can we not do that and make it? And they'd say, well, the pickup will be way back here because it's 24 frets. And I was like, no, it won't. Just put it right next to the fretboard. It'll be fine, Right. It came out of like a problem solving kind of thing. And all my signature gear kind of comes from that. Yeah. It's a problem-solving issue, and it tends to work for people that don't know who the hell I am, which is great.
Well, yeah, and for me, it's like I said earlier, it's just so usable, man. Like I've used it for country gigs, I've used it for rock gigs, I've used it for, I mean, anything that I have coming up. It's like the first thing always going on the board. It's so versatile, especially with I just got a Reverend with some P90s in it, dude. That gate works so great with
Just
those
grabs the
P90s.
just the raw floor. I just
Right,
when I'm pulling it in, if I have a noisy room, I just like turn the guitar up and roll it in until it's like, all right, the hum's gone. Like
right.
that's grabs, and it usually grabs at like 11:30,
Yeah,
like on
yeah.
like right where they usually grab the isolated stuff.
Well, dude, I can't tell you too. I mean, if anybody listening to this is, done the gigging stuff, with the small bars and stuff, you never know what you're getting for power, man. You have no clue what you're going to get. You have no clue what backline's going to be. It's just like, okay, well, if I have that on the board, I know everything is going to be better. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's going to be
yeah.
perfect. It's going to be fine. I already know what I'm getting out of it. So yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
don't know. It's great, man. But that was one of the funny things with me with signature gear, because I just didn't like it. Wasn't because of signatures on it or anything like that. It's just like maybe it's the marketing from my perspective of signature gear. It's like, this is what this does. If you want to
It's
sound
like
like
so
that.
specific, right? Like
Right,
sometimes your gear can be so hyper specific that it loses its like point, right?
right,
Like we forget that the most successful signature piece of gear of all time is the Les Paul.
right.
Like they have signatures of the signature. It's the so and so Les Paul, and I'm like, that's like the signature to the. It's like we're in Inception at this point, or whatever.
Right, right.
But yeah, it's like I know what you mean. Sometimes it is nice to have hyper specific signature gear. I'll give you a great example of that is like the guys like Tosin,
For sure. Yeah.
Petrucci,
Hmm.
where they make this hyper specific, you know, shred machine. It's like that's kind of the only way you can get a 7 string to play easy. And like I like that. But also it's like that's also like so hyper specific that that will dictate the path that you take on the instrument. Like you're not gonna be playing a lot of slide Derek Trucks licks on a Petrucci guitar, right? Like,
For
it's like
sure.
not gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. So I appreciate that. I mean, like, it was really important with any signature piece of gear. I got 3 pieces of gear with my name on it, and it was really important that it wasn't just a paint job.
Yeah.
You know,
Right, right.
something stock, right?
For sure.
It's something that solved an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. And it definitely has for me, and everybody that's played that I've gigged with that, has heard it. They've all loved it, man. So you and Brian and all the guys at Wampler absolutely knocked it out of the park with that stuff, man.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
awesome, awesome.
well, before we wrap this up, Andy, let's get your plugs out of the way first, and then I'm starting to do this new thing where I guess I'm calling it words of wisdom. Any sort of words of wisdom that you think you could share and give to anybody, and maybe not. I don't know if I like it being super specific. Just music
Yeah,
lovers in general.
yeah, yeah. I think let's start with that one because I'm gonna
Okay.
reiterate what I
Okay.
said earlier. Um, listen to music.
Yep.
Don't just listen to music when you put your guitar in your lap. Like, don't turn your ears off as a guitar player when you're driving down the road listening to music. Like all the practicing that I do is when I'm in the car behind the wheel. I'm trying to identify intervals. I'm trying to identify bends and what's the pattern. Can I see it in my mind as I'm going with I don't have my guitar, right? Keeping all your ears on all the time. And if you get exposed to something, chase the thread of its origin, right? Like if you like Billy Strings and it's really good to you, and you don't know who Del McCurry is, and you don't know who Doc Watson is, then that's where you should go. You should drink from the same well. You know what I mean?
For
Because
sure.
that's where they got it from. That's my words of wisdom. Is just if you're in the game as a guitarist, man, just listen to music.
Absolutely, man. That's some of the best advice I could ever give to anybody, man. So I'm definitely going to share that along. But let's go ahead and get your plugs too, so everybody can know where to find you. And I'll have all those linked down below in the show notes as
I
well.
For the most important one, is patreon.com/AndyWoodMusic. That is the one-stop shop for a weekly live masterclass on Zoom, one-on-one lessons, tabs, transcriptions. I've got 600 posts over there, 650 posts. So if you're just looking for licks and videos, there's hundreds of those. I just made one this morning. And that's a great community. We have a private Discord server. So if you're a guy that's wanting to learn how to make videos and learning how to do other things in the industry, but you don't want to just jump onto YouTube and get into it, then we've got a private Discord server with guys that are sharing with each other, and then they're sharing it. So it's really a cool area and a great community. That's patreon.com/AndyWoodMusic. Is the smallest tier is $5. So, that's a month. It's like freaking a cup of coffee, and that gets you all the videos and all the tabs and stuff. So it's like, there's not a lot of tabs, but occasionally I'll pay Levi or Luke Bowman or one of these super transcribers to put it in Guitar Pro and some of the programs that guys use that I suck at. Like, I don't even have Guitar. I suck at Guitar Pro, man. But yeah, like, I've got all that kind of stuff there. The next most important one is woodshedguitarexperience.com. We are selling out of this year's very quickly. If you're on the fence, I suggest you reach out. We've got an early bird special that runs till March 31st. That is $200 off. So use the early bird code, save a couple $100. That is woodshedguitarexperience.com. The lineup for this year is Eric Johnson, Brent Mason, Andy Timmons, Mark Letary, Greg Koch, Seth Rosenblum, and myself. So it is stacked.
Absolutely.
Lastly is andywoodmusic.com. That's where, like, the tour stuff, the shops, and all that kind of stuff. You can see the videos, get the music, get the tunes, download the Axe FX patches, and all this kind of stuff is at andywoodmusic.com. Yep, that's it.
Awesome. Well, hey, Andy, I appreciate it, dude. I appreciate you taking the time, man. It was a great talk, man.
Man, great hang. Love the questions. It gets me fired up to start my day, man.
Awesome. Well, for all of you guys and for Andy, we'll see you guys next week on Man the Helm podcast.